What is up, Toy Story fans? In this video, I'll be talking about how I believe that Toy Story 5 potentially could be Pixar's Magnum Opus if they do things right. So, let's get into this. So, I'm going to start from the very beginning of the movie and go to the end, detailing how I think that if each act was I'm not saying that I'm the perfect be-all, end-all opinion of what could make a good movie. I do believe that if they played their cards right, this could be the best, not only Toy Story movie, but the best Pixar movie in general. So yeah, let's get right into this. I was a fan of Toy Story 4. It's actually my favorite Toy Story. Before you click off this video, let me explain. I think that Toy Story 1, 2, 3, fantastic. 3 was a perfect ending to Andy's story, whereas 4 was a perfect ending to Woody's story. Now, as soon as they said 5 is coming around, I'm like, oh boy. Now I'm starting to look at 4 more like, but that's not going to be the end of Woody's story, because there's no way. First of all, it's been revealed that Woody's going to be in it, so you can't exactly take that back, you know. And also, yeah, the fact that Woody's in it means that isn't the ending of Woody's story. So now we have to think about, okay, now that's a jumping off point for whatever Woody's next arc or story is going to have to be. And then the same deal with all the other characters. And so now the Pixar team had to think of, okay, what can we do with Woody here? And I think that they can find a way to wrap this up and make Toy Story the perfect trilogy. Now, it could have been a perfect trilogy. I think that they can make it a perfect trilogy, which would be better because, you know, a perfect trilogy still has movies in a perfect trilogy, right? And I think that there is a way they can do so. Now, 4, in terms of there being a 5, 4 does not feel like an end of the story anymore, as I said. So, I thought of a way that we can make it more of an ending of Woody's story, and instead have that be a bouncing off point for one of his new arcs. So instead of it being like the end of Woody's story, it's the end of the old beginning, and now moving into a new beginning for Woody's story. And in that sense, we get a new definition of Woody's character, which I think is actually a good idea. Now that I'm thinking about it, I thought about what would make for a good arc for Woody, and I was like, you know what? There are some good ideas here. So let's start with the first act of the movie. And let's just define where each of the characters are at right now. So Andy is off, and I do think that Andy needs to be in this movie. Like, I really do think he needs to be in this movie for this to actually put a fulfilling conclusion to everything. Because if it's just like, oh, and now Bonnie gives away the toys to somebody else, then it's not going to be a fitting conclusion, and now it just feels like they're going on and on and on, and just making more and more of these things. Which I know is profitable for them. From a business standpoint, it's not the worst idea, but you know what? There's got to be an end to it. I mean, you got to have some sort of ending to this franchise, right? And people are already like, this 4 was too many, right? And they've really just got to end it here, because otherwise people are going to complain even more and more and more, and then, you know, the box office. Right? So I think this definitely needs to be ended, and I think it can be an even better end than Toy Story 3 if they play the cards right. So, starting it off, yeah, well, let's just define where everyone is, as I just said. So Andy is off about 24-ish years old, I think. If we're going off of how timing is, if we're going off how long it's been since, like, the last movie, he should be about, like, 23. But I think that's a little bit too young of a jump, considering a lot of people aren't even married by 23. So I would say something like a 12-year, 13-year gap, something like that, where he's around 30, not like 40s, but like around 30, where he's just about, where his kid's like 3 years old or something, I think would be the most effective, and I'll get into that soon. Maybe like 4. His kid should be about Bonnie's age from the 4th one. So let's just say that, yeah, we have Andy is married, and he's got a 4-year-old kid. So let's say, yeah, it's been about 12 or so years since that, if you got the W wins, you know. So, I think that we should have, yeah, so that's about where Andy is at. And Woody and Bo Peep are off on their new life adventures, right there. They're lost toys, as it kind of said. and they have no freedom. And in a sense, it's kind of like if you characterize them as kind of the role of a husband and wife typically. It's kind of backwards, but if you give them that role, they're like, yeah, husband and wife. They have fulfilled their purpose at entertaining, like raising their children. Even though it's backwards, right? It's like the child's playing with them. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of that same role. Whereas parents, they're done raising their kids, so now they just get this life of freedom or whatever. It's kind of like that. So they're in that position where they're like, okay, what's the next chapter of our life? And I think that skipping 12 years later or so, where we have defined where they are now, is a good idea. But I will explain more of what we can do to show what they have been up to at this point. But that's about where they are. In my opinion, I think this should be around the time when Bonnie is about to get rid of her toys as well. I think that Bonnie is a good middle point for this sort of like, it's kind of like an inciting incident for what I believe should be the next arcs of Andy and Woody. So I think that adding Bonnie into the mix actually was a very smart choice, especially for Toy Story 4 in the context of a Toy Story 5. In the context of if they were just going to end it at 4, Bonnie would have been like a weird way to, I mean, it kind of was like the end of Woody's story, you know, but we didn't really get an end to like Buzz's story, I think. So I do feel like there is some room for closure. If they were going to end it at 3, that works. But they've done 4, now they have to really close it out, you know, do an even grander ending than 3. And I think 4 had a great ending. I like 4 better than 3. I do think that 3 definitely had the better, like, fulfilling ending, you know. I just didn't really love the second act. And I totally get it if people liked that. I do. But with 5 coming in, I do think that there is a great story told here. So Woody and Bo Peep are now embracing their freedom as new toys. So we've got that. And then you have Buzz and stuff are Buzz, Jesse, all those other toys, Forky, all that stuff, they are about to be passed on. Bonnie is about to go past them on. So we're at that point where Bonnie's old enough that she's like going to college, and the other Woody and Bo Peep are doing their own thing, and then Andy is married with a 4-year-old kid. So that's kind of the definition, like the beginning, you know, that's like stuff they could announce beforehand or something. It's like the basic premise of where the bouncing off point for the inciting incident and stuff. Now, I do think, so let's start from the beginning of the movie. I think this movie, and this is very not something I would usually say, but I do think this movie would benefit from a sort of cold open. One of those things like in the Sonic movie or something like that, where it's like, we started here and this is how it happened. Would I recommend that for any other Pixar film? No. But I do think that that would be a good way to hook in the people who are cynical about this movie and show, oh, that is a way to start this movie. Would I typically go with this stance? No. But with so many people being like, okay, why are they making this movie? I think that having a trailer be this opening cold open would hook people in. I think this cold open should be Andy and his kid open the box, or opening this box, and it's the like exact same looking scene as Andy opening the box of toys in, I think it was Toy Story 3. Just that scene where like it can foreshadow, and the idea is that it will foreshadow that in the end Andy's gonna have the toys back. Now, but I think Bonnie did a great job of is making that like middle point where it ended Andy's story already, but there's more room for Andy to still come in as an adult when he has his own children. So I think that there's a way for Andy to still be incorporated into the end of this saga, because he really should be, in my opinion. And I think that Bonnie was a good like middle point that allows for Toy Story 4 to happen, allows for Woody to start going through this sort of arc as a new foundation for his character. So I think after that cold open, I say we dial it back. And this is where I want to talk about why Pixar, this should be their like magnum opus film. Their film that represents their whole catalog of the past, that shows this is the Pixar movie that is, I think that it's a great idea for this to be like their magnum opus, like their sort of crowning moment, at least of their studio so far. They started with Toy Story 1 and ending off the Toy Story franchise, not only representing all the Toy Story films that came before it, but representing the films that came before it, which I think is a great idea. So taking little bits of inspiration from each of the movies, to me, just absolutely screams what needs to happen for Toy Story 5. So I think that starting the movie with a sort of more somber opening that I feel like Toy Story 5 simply can't just be like a fun adventure movie. I feel like it's got to have more of that to top the emotions of 4 and especially 3. I think it's got to go full on like kind of grown up with the audience. I feel like this should be the least quote unquote fun of the Disney, I mean not the Disney, the Pixar lineup. I think this needs to be more of like a reflective, kind of like an Inside Out feel. I think that's one thing that would really benefit this movie, is kind of having a more like, obviously we're not having any like any of the Inside Out characters in it, but that was one way. As I was saying, I want to represent each of the films that they have made up to this point. I think one of those great themes would be having a more Inside Out feel. Not Inside Out 2. That's more of like a more like, I mean, yes, that's tackling emotion, but I think more of a Inside Out, like reflecting on childhood type of vibe. Like it shouldn't be, I'm not saying there can't be silly fun moments, but I think it should have more of an Inside Out feel versus like a Toy Story 2 or even Toy Story 3 or 4 type of feel, where the whole movie is a bit more emotional. You know what I'm saying? And then I think after the cold open, where it teases that hook, Andy's going to get the toys back, then we jump into the opening sequence that kind of is like Up. Now, not Up, because obviously we're not telling the story about 2 people growing to an old age, but I think it would be a cool idea to catch up those last 12 years. We have this sort of montage where Andy and Woody are, because they are so connected, I feel like it'd be awesome to do a sequence where it's kind of like 24, the TV show, or like what we've seen in the Into the Spider-Verse films, where they kind of show multiple things on screen at once and kind of juxtapose what's happening with them. So I think it would be fantastic if on like maybe not half of the screen, but what it does is like it'll montage between, oh, this happened to Andy, and oh, this happened to Woody, kind of like Andy's going through his like whole like college process where he's finding love, getting married, you know, and then having a kid. Woody and Bo Peep, it shows their adventures, how they've grown as a sort of couple, how they've grown, like that type of thing. So I think we should show them side by side to kind of show that, like, as in from a filmmaking standpoint, it would show like the connection these 2 characters have. And I think it would be a really cool to draw that narrative inspiration and using new creative animation that pushes forward the limits of animation and try something new with Toy Story. Because typically, yes, each of the movies have looked nicer and nicer, but I think it'd be cool for this last movie to incorporate some more interesting elements of animation into it. So we get like a more emotional sequence like Up. I would say it's about probably like half the length. Like it doesn't need to be this super emotional journey as much as it needs to, as much as it'd be like a catch up. But I think that would pay tribute to Up well and be that sort of, again, try to like go for this more like, not, since it's the last film in the franchise of their first movie, it'd be so cool to kind of pay tribute to this whole thing. Also, another thing that it would pay tribute to is Coco, where it shows that like at the beginning it mentions like, hey, it shows Coco and how she is like she's this old grandma, right? And by the end, the last scene of the movie is her peacefully resolving something that's been like this sense of turmoil throughout their life. Obviously not to the same degree, but I think this idea of showing that like the hook of Coco the cold open with the toys would provide that same kind of feel as Coco. So that would be another cool thing. So during this montage, I think that like Andy and Woody should be like, having their moment where they're like all growing up for these like 12 years or such. And within this sequence, each of them would like alternate between having these moments where they're experiencing this sort of nostalgia. It's been a lot of years. As someone, I'm 17. I'm about not Woody's age, Andy's age during the events of Toy Story 3. However, in an age where a lot of nostalgia is rampant, there's a lot of remakes of different not as much reboots of movie franchises, remakes of films, trying to capitalize on that nostalgia. I think telling a story about kind of nostalgia would be a cool take for this. And honestly, there haven't been like any like really like, I guess Cars 3 kind of did the nostalgia. Ratatouille, that's what I was thinking. I knew one of them did it. So I think it would be awesome for this part to have some sort of sequence where Andy takes his kid to the Al's toy barn because his kid wants a new toy. I think that's a great idea of this premise. So he's like about 4-year-olds, like Bonnie's age. And he's like, I want a toy, Daddy, because he's like young. Maybe he didn't have any. He's like, I don't want my baby toys anymore. Like I want like a sophisticated toy. Like maybe he saw like a, just to do a little nod to Lightyear to pretend it exists, even though it's really not that good. But maybe like he saw a socks like a toy advertising socks and Al's Toy Barn. And then Andy's like, okay, I'll go get your toy. So they go over to Al's Toy Barn, and there's this moment where it's kind of pays a tribute to like Ratatouille, where Andy walks in there and he sees like a Buzz Lightyear toy or something, and he's like, oh frick. And then all the memories come back to him. And there's this whole thing where he has this flashback. And at the same time, again, showing that we've got this like sort of both Andy and Woody are kind of having the same vibe of nostalgia, that Woody sees like a pizza planet or something on one of his adventures. Or maybe I would say it'd be cool if Andy got like this big sequence, whereas Woody just saw little things here and there. Like he saw a pizza planet. He saw just things that reminded him of the toys. Maybe he saw a red cowboy hat on a girl. It's like, oh, Jesse. Or maybe he saw a horse and it's like, bro, I miss the horse. Or just like different things that remind him. At this point, Woody's kind of old at this point, and Andy, they're at the point where they're not at the point where everything is nostalgic, but they're at that point where it's like, I'm starting to like really miss that bygone era, They're kind of missing that time. I also think that another cool thing that would set up for the future of this is that Sid and Andy go to the same college. I don't think they should be like roommates necessarily, but they should kind of like reconnect a little bit, and kind of as like one of the side characters, like like Monsters University, there was some of those like kind of like side friends they had, kind of like that, just to give Sid a little cameo and tease something for later in the movie. I would say it'd be super cool to have them like meet up, let's say a friend of a friend, and realize that Sid is still super into like toy collecting and stuff. That would set up something that I would think is really cool for the second act, but we'll get there. So at this point, this first act is just like, it's a longer sequence where I'd say like the first half, the first act is showing what happened with Andy and Woody. Now, is this going to be super fun for kids? Not as much. But I think if this film tries too hard to appeal to young kids, I don't think it'll be as good as it could be. Yes, there should be like little jokes here and there, like goofy stuff that happens as Andy and Woody are going. There's this story of Andy and Woody. Some moments that would appeal to kids, right? But it should be more of a Ratatouille or like Inside Out level of thing, where it's like there are moments just by the nature of them being toys or the nature of them being emotions, but not like slapstick like Cars 2 or anything obnoxious like that. Like I feel like this really needs to focus on the emotion more than the goofiness of the animated medium. Now, I think the next thing that would be really cool after we take them on this journey, Annie and Woody, going through the moments of nostalgia, Woody and Andy are starting to realize, I miss the old days, you know, like any nostalgic person would, right? Andy's like remembering how much these toys meant to him and how much he wants them to mean he was a kid, right? And Woody is like, was it really the right idea to abandon the toys? Was it really my right idea? Sure, I wanted to be free, but was this the way to go about it? Was abandoning all my friends back with Bonnie, was that the right way to do it? And that makes a good parallel for Woody and Andy in this, because that would then make there be a sort of journey to take Woody on for this last movie, so he's not just like a static character. And I think it would be really cool for him to realize, you know what? As much as I like being free, I think that this isn't the life for me. And a lot of movies do this really well, or like TV series. One of them that I will shout out is 24. A lot of seasons, it's like, oh, he's about to retire, but then he comes back and he's like, they need me. So having some sort of the moment where he realizes, like, my friends need me. Like, it's been so much time. And I would even maybe argue to throw in more of an emotional core, have something happen to Bo Peep. Because I don't really see him abandoning Bo Peep. But maybe in one of their adventures, she got ran over by a car or something. Maybe that's not the best place to take it. But I know a lot of people didn't really love Bo Peep and didn't really love what they did to Woody. So, and I know a lot of people do like Bo Peep. But it would be a perfect, like, in between. For the people who love Bo Peep, it'd be an emotional, sad moment. For the people who didn't care about Bo Peep, she's gone, and now we can move on. I think it would be a cool way, and Woody's like, what's next? What do I do now? Another good way, Indiana Jones 5 recently, while that wasn't like the greatest movie, it kind of did a good job of that type of vibe. Like, they want to go back to their roots, you know? And I think that having this first act focus on Woody and Andy realizing what matters most to them, maybe not. Obviously not for Andy, like his kid is going to matter more than the toys, but just realizing like those are the good old days, you know? And that would really be perfect for these people, because all these people who are still hooked on the Toy Story series, the people who are going to be showing up to Toy Story 5 are either little kids who will benefit from some of the humor, or these longtime Toy Story fans who are feeling nostalgic for the first movie, are feeling nostalgic for those times, the first, second, and third movie, and going back to that core of Andy and Woody with the nostalgia really would work. And at this point, Woody's a bit older, more experienced. He's had a lot of his life go by. I don't really know how long these toys last, but I'm assuming forever. I don't think they just die, you know. As long as they don't actually get ripped apart or whatever, I think they can be repaired, as we've seen previously. But, yeah, so I think this would be a great beginning. Now, to round out the first act, I think after this montage, we cut to Bonnie. And now we get to see what's happening with Bonnie. She's at college, and she's had her toys. Let's say she's more like me or some of my friends, where we kept our toys. Like, I'm bringing my toys over to college, and I'm probably going to use them occasionally. I mean, they're stuffed animals. They're not like action figures or whatever, but same idea. I'm going to bring my stuffed animals. So let's say Bonnie was more attached than Andy. Maybe she, at this point, you know, in the modern age, I feel like it's a little bit less of a stigma to bring stuffed animals around than maybe around the time of Toy Story 3. Also, Bonnie being a girl, I don't know what it is, but, you know, I feel like girls have less of a pressure to get rid of their toys than guys, at least in terms of stuffed animals and stuff. So, I think that Bonnie keeping her toys through college, make her old enough that it's like old enough and different enough from Andy, where it's not the exact same idea. But, for example, let's say Bonnie's found use of toys. She's brought them through college, she really likes them, but let's say, I don't know, she realizes, you know what, having kids isn't for me, or something, and she doesn't know what to do with the toys anymore. So let's say she puts them up on the car. Obviously not the car, some store. Maybe she sells them to a collector's store, because, phones and stuff aren't exactly a big thing in this universe or whatever. So let's say she takes them to a collector's shop and sells them. Now, this is where I feel like that could be the whole first act. Now, that sounds like it's a lot of emotion, not as much fun stuff, but I think this is a perfect way to take this movie. The whole first act is just setting up these developments and showing this is where we are with these characters 12 years later, and this is kind of the journey that these characters have been on in the past one. With that cold open teasing. I think this would be a great way to really pound out that emotional core and really make it feel like there's any point of developing the story. Now, I think the second movie, or not second movie, the second act is where we can get into some more of the shenanigans and stuff and have it be more of the fun of Toy Story. The second act, I would love to see focus less on this, more of the fun, like Toy Story 2 type of stuff. So, Bonnie has, let's say she's a bit more of a, she sells them for a profit or something, some collector's place. I don't feel like it's pretty apparent that she wasn't quite as attached to this game. I think maybe, I'm not saying that Bonnie's bad or anything, but just having a separate feel to Andy. Maybe she hung on to him. At this point, she's like, what am I going to do with these? Like, who am I going to give them to? I'm in college. Like, I'm in the middle of a college campus. Nobody wants my toys. So she goes to a collector's shop. Instead of, Andy at home, probably knew, kids in the neighborhood, like, and then he found Bonnie, at the what's it called? Daycare. Bonnie, though, she's like, you know what? I'll just sell them to, like, a collector's shop, right? Now, this is where I feel like Sid should come in and be in this movie. I think it's a great idea to bring Sid back because you know what? He was epic. And I feel like there's more that can be explored with Sid, especially since it's fun to see how people change. I feel like at this point, Sid should be like just like a normal dude but who collects toys. Like, he's not crazy anymore. He wasn't that crazy. He was just a dude creatively playing his toys. But like, at this point, he really respects his toys, and it's like this right toy. Maybe some people in high school made fun of him for it, but he never stopped. And he goes around to antique shops, like different places, getting toys, right? And he goes and sees this box of toys that is with Bonnie. And that Bonnie has sold to the shop. And this is where Sid plays into the movie. I really do like the idea of not where the first, second, and third acts aren't. I think when done effectively, it's really cool to have a first act and a third act that have the same tone and vibe, and a second act that's a bit different. Now, I'm not saying like completely jarring, like differences in how the acts feel, like Soul or something. Like Pixar's Soul, the way they did it was a bit jarring, but I think this would be a cool tribute to something like Soul, where the second act is more of a different vibe and dynamic than the first and third acts. I think another movie that does this really well is The Tomorrow War. It's a Netflix movie. You can go check it out, but it does a really good job. The first and third act focus on these certain characters, where the second act focuses more on a different set of characters. And I think that this movie, just spending time focusing on its characters, is much more important and fitting to a conclusion than focusing on adding new characters. I feel like there shouldn't be too many new characters. I feel like it should really be about nostalgia and these different things. Maybe we add like one or two characters here and there. I'm not going to come up with them because personally I'd rather them not add anything. But you know what? I think that maybe a couple toys, a couple new ones, so they can, I don't know, sell some actual toys in real life, whatever. Be a business, I get it. But I think that focusing on the characters we've already established is necessary to make this feel like a fitting conclusion. So I think that doing this third act um, where Sid is like a toy collector is a cool idea and a fun place to take these characters. So I would say at this point, Andy is going to not be too big of a part of the film yet, because now we've done the setup, we've done the open and the cold open, and now it's time to say, hey, how did we get to Andy finding the toys? How did we get to that part? How did that happen? And that's where the goofy fun stuff happens. This is where we get that typical Toy Story action sequences, like the middle act of the Toy Story movie. Not the emotional finale, but the middle act where there's a bunch of fun stuff going on. So I think that at this point, Woody's on his own. Since I think my favorite way to go about it, or maybe Bo Peeps with him. I don't know. That's depending on your preference. I think that having an emotional sequence with Bo Peep, giving up the ghost would be a good way to really establish that emotional feel at the beginning. But, either way, it's fine regardless. But Woody has realized, I want to go be with my friends again. So he's trying to find a way to go back to Bonnie. Now, does he know that Bonnie has sold the toys? No. So that's where it's going to come in, where Woody's doing his whole shenanigans. He's going on his little quest where he's trying to find the toys. And then at the same time, Sid has bought the toys, and we get this part where they're freaking out, right? Let's say we don't really know that much about Sid at this point. Or we know, but the toys don't know. So it's kind of this fun, dramatic irony where we know Sid is kind of a reformed man, but the toys are like, oh, frick, this is Sid. Like, we haven't seen him in years. What is he going to do to us? And then they realize, oh, he's a good dude. And this would be the perfect moment to have a fun cameo from Lotso in a way that can make sense. Lotso gets lost. He's in a junkyard or whatever. And Sid found him. And now Lotso is kind of this, I think that it would have been a cool thing. Maybe not another flashback since we've got some of those, but kind of have a Gabby kind of moment for Lotso. And maybe have some sort of explanation for Sid. I think I have a reason for Lotso. I'm not just saying a cameo. I don't care for cameo and stuff. But I do have a reason for Lotso coming in. And that is that Lotso has talked to Sid. And what I think this would establish, it is kind of cringe to have him kind of talk, but also that was established in the first movie where Sid knows toys are like alive, right? And maybe people made fun of him. He's like, I swear toys can talk, or something. Sid maybe made fun of something. Went to therapy or something, but now he's a changed man. I'd say he went to therapy. That just sounds like something funny. That's it. Have gone through therapy for something. And then Sid with Lotso and talking to Lotso and stuff in the second act. Let's say eventually Woody gets it. So now we have Woody, like an awesome reunion of Woody and the toys. I feel like that would add some more emotion into there. I think it's a good way
today, sir.
to have Woody be like, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong. And then just this good moment where, it's not that he wasn't developed, right? It's just this theme that, sometimes you make wrong decisions, but sometimes it's time to look back on what matters most to you. In this case, I think Woody, what mattered most to him was his friends he made on the journey, And yeah, his freedom mattered, but at this point, he's like, you know what? Was that really... was the freedom what I wanted, or was it that I felt like I fulfilled my purpose? Maybe I can go back and find a new purpose with my friends again. So I think that would be a great thing for the second act, a sort of reunion with some fun sequences where by the end of the second act they've met up through different stuff. So the second act is this whole fun thing where Sid comes back. I kind of feel like there's a villain in here or something. Yeah, all that stuff. Now, another thing that could work is Bonnie giving the toys back to Andy. Now, the thing that doesn't work for me there is I struggle to find any way there can be a second act. Whereas if we bring in Sid, not only do we get a fun, I know that a twist villain isn't good necessarily because Disney has a lot of those, but more of a twist villain for the characters, but just a funny, like, dramatic irony villain for us. And I think that would be a good way of balancing like a decent like twist villain plus some good dramatic irony in there for cinema or whatever. Then we've got the second act where there's the reunions. Woody is at a point where he feels like he needs a new purpose, that the old, just being a free toy, being a lost toy wasn't made for him. Because frankly, I don't know. It seems like that would have been good for a time, but Woody just seems like someone who cares so much about making fun and cares about his friends. And I get that Woody would want to go be free, but I also don't see he's the type of character that would never want to go see buzzes. So I think they reunite. We've got Sid in the game for some fun stuff, and then we move into the third act, where Sid knows about the toys. He knows they can talk and stuff. So this would have to be pretty well done sequence for this to work, because it could be absolute cringe. But I think Sid should tell the toys and be like, you know what? Here's their story. And there's this moment where it's kind of like a campfire scene. You know what I'm talking about? Like a scene where people recall their past or whatever. We've got this emotional thing where they're talking about Andy, and Sid ends up being like a new inciting incident. He's like, you know what? Let's get you back to Andy. So now we've got Sid going and reconnecting with Andy because they had been a friend of a friend in college. And we get this awesome montage, the sequence where Sid talks to Andy. They've got this whole thing going. And sure, I would say that the acts are not going to all be equal in runtime. And I don't think this necessarily needs to be that long of a movie either. I think it just needs to be a fulfilling emotional ending. But I think that Sid going and being like, believing in the toys and all that stuff would just be this great moment, since Sid already knows about the livelihood of the toys. And it would just be, I think it'd be awesome. I think it would be a great way to incorporate Sid back into the franchise, give us that nostalgic vibe, but also still having be a character, a cool character that's grown up quite a bit since when we saw him. Now we get back to that cold open where Sid has returned the toys, and probably for they're probably just a bit more expensive or something. Maybe he's found them. Maybe Bonnie didn't sell them to a collector's shop. Maybe a garage sale or something, although she's in the garage. So something like that. Anyway, Sid gets them over to Andy. They were a friend of a friend, and he hears, he's like, dude, I gotta return these toys. Like, I heard their story. I feel like there has to be, I feel like Sid should be the inciting incident for these characters to be like, you know what? I think you got to go back to Andy, because let's say Sid shows pictures of Andy's kids or something, again, friend of a friend, probably through like Instagram, some sort of, Pixar's version of Instagram, and just the toys see Andy as kids now, and they have like a renewed purpose for their existence. They're like, you know what? Let's go see our buddy Andy. And somewhere in there, I feel like Sid should reinstall Woody's toy. Voice box. I feel like that is a very important detail that I've got to add here. I think he needs to reinstall that voice box for Woody. Anyway, we get into the third act, and it replays that cold open. We've got back to that point. Sid has got the toys, and this is where I would say we're about bit into the third act, about halfway through the third act, and then we get this cold open, and then we just see the face we see Andy light up. We see that he has all of his toys are still here. He's got this wave of nostalgia, and his kid is just overjoyed at how many new toys he's got. And then we get this sequence where he plays with the toys, and then let's say Andy, we get like another sequence where Andy's kind of growing up. We show Andy over the years. We see like different videotapes. You know how like in Toy Story 3 there are some like videos, or like I think in multiple earlier Toy Story movies, there's videos of like Andy's mom recording Andy playing with toys. It'd be cool to have the sequence where Andy recording his son, and then it's Andy's son recording his son. Let's not go too many generations, but like one more. And we see this thing. And then the very end of the movie is a sort of family reunion for Andy and all of his family. Andy and his wife are like grandparents at this point, and this is where Coco comes in. He's kind of the Coco of this story. Sure, Woody's always been the main character. He's really been the main character. But Andy's always been this presence in the background, this still very important character, kind of like Coco was. And we've got this scene where Andy is about to, like, Andy and his wife, maybe even his wife has already passed on. Yeah, that would actually probably make it more like, Andy is here at this family reunion. He sees all of his posterity, and they're playing with his toys. All these years later, one of the kids is, like, playing with Woody and stuff. And then, in the last moments of Andy's life, he gets, like, let's say the kids have all gone inside, they're eating lunch or something at this family reunion, and he sees Woody, and he's like, my old friend, my partner or something, and he pulls on the string, and they're alone in a room, and Woody says something different. He doesn't say one of his voice lines. He doesn't say one of those, and he talks to Andy. Because I think that Sid should be that, like, inspire Woody to do so. Like, what is there to lose? Andy's this old man. Andy's grown up. Like, what is there to lose, you know? And at this point, Woody's like, you know what? Andy's going to pass away soon. They'll probably just think he's a crazy old man or whatever. And then at the very end of this movie, Andy and Woody get to talk like the best friends that they were. It could be cringe, but it also could be even more emotional than the ending of 3 and 4. And I know that Pixar has the ability to pull weird ideas and make them emotional. They did it with Ratatouille, a rat cooking. They can have a toy talk to his owner and make that emotional. I think it could beat Toy Story 3 and 4 if we see this scene, and in the window behind them, maybe the kids are back out playing. We see in the window behind Andy and all of his posterity, and then Andy and Woody are having this heart-to-heart conversation. And then I think the very last shot, or even maybe a final credits scene. You know, let's say a post-credit scene, because that would be a great way to end the movie. And then a post-credit scene is a funeral for Andy, and it shows Andy getting lowered into the ground. I know that's really depressing, but I think it's great. And in his grave, he's got his two best friends, Woody and Buzz, and he's going down with him. And on the gravestone says,
Your evil plot ends
that
here.
proves to me that this can be not only the satisfying conclusion of the Toy Story series, but possibly the best Toy Story movie. Now, was my idea perfect? Absolutely not.
Sunnyside, folks.
Maybe Andy
thought
doesn't
so.
even die. That might be
Now,
excessive.
in honor
But
of
I
your
think that would be
arrival,
sick.
we're
Actually, maybe that
throwing
can
a
even
new
be
Toys Welcome
even like
Carnival.
a flash forward.
My friends here have some
maybe
games for
at
y'all
this
to
point,
play. Twitch has
Maybe
got
he's just like a grandpa.
competition
He's
your
like a 90-year-old
horse would
man
be
or something when
perfect
he talks to
for.
Woody or something. But
Sparks
at
has
that
a
end,
teeny
I
racing
think it'd be so
challenge,
cool to see
and
into
Chunk
to
is
infinity
hosting the
and
alley
beyond
toss.
on the gravestone.
Remember
I
to
don't know.
try all
I
the
think
games.
that if they were able to
Most
pull off something like
importantly,
this, a more emotional,
smile and
less
have
goofy
fun.
Toy Story movie that
Oh,
perfectly
I
sends
almost
off
forgot.
Andy and
I've
Woody,
made a
all
scavenger
these
hunt
characters,
and
I feel like this
hidden
could be the best
goodies
Toy
all
Story
over
movie.
for you to find.
If they are able to
make
pull off
sure you
something
look everywhere.
like this,
Now, get
not
on
even
out there and
necessarily.
have fun.
Obviously, I'm not saying I'm smarter than the Pixar people.
Hey,
Like,
howdy, hey,
I'm sure they
I'm
can come
Woody.
up with an idea even better than this if they are putting their hard effort into it. And it's been years since 4 came out, so I'm sure they've been really putting effort into this.
Wow, that was
But if there can
really-
be something as good as this, I'm sure what they'll make is even better than this. But if it's something like this, I know that this can be the perfect ending to the Toy Story saga. 3 was the ending, Andy's childhood story. 4 was the quote-unquote ending to Woody's story. The 5 is the ending to the series, the ending of Andy's generational story. The lesson here being, there's no reason to let go of the past when you can push it forward. Why get rid of your old toys when you can make your posterity happy? Why would you do that? And it goes to show, this was my purpose. Woody's fulfilled his purpose. Andy's fulfilled his purpose. And I just can't even see how they could, like, it's a perfect ending. I think just showing the beginning of Andy's life, growing up with these toys, and in the end, being buried with the toys. Not all of them. That would be goofy. But toys he cared about most. And maybe it's like his grandkids that put it in something. They sacrificed their toy because how much it meant to their grandpa. Me, that would be Toy Story 5. That would be my favorite Toy Story movie. Not just because I came up with it, but because it would perfectly end the whole saga, and there would be no reason to ever continue. Andy and Woody and Buzz are ready to go. Now, there'll probably have to be some sort of explanation that the toys can actually die or something. Or maybe it's just, you know, I don't know. I don't know how that would work with... I mean, I think at some point Buzz and Woody have got to die. Like, their character. Like, you know, they've got to have some sort of ending. And as long as they could explain that in the canon, I think that would be a satisfying ending. Andy, Woody, and Buzz going into the ground. And yeah, it would be sad. But it would be a perfect ending. For a kid's movie, that's a bit harder to sell. That might be a hard sell to have it end in this way.
I could do this every day.
But I think that having just the end be like a hopeful like message with his posterity's been happy and all this stuff. And then maybe not even an end credit scene, maybe just a skit. Maybe one of those like little skits they drop on Disney Plus. I would just love to see on that gravestone, to infinity and beyond. That would make me tear up. If I don't know, that would just be so good. But that is my take on why I feel that Toy Story 5 not only be the best Toy Story movie, but if they do it right, it'd be the best Pixar movie
This
ever.
is just silly.
Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found some worth in this video. If you agree with me, tell me down below. If you think my take sucks, tell me down below. Maybe be respectful. It took a lot of time coming up with this idea. Okay, maybe like 4 hours, so I guess it wasn't that much. But let me know down below what you think would be your perfect take on Toy Story 5. You want it to be a more goofy... You want there to be more than 5 movies? Do you think this is like a start of a new saga with Bonnie? Or do you think that... Are you more in the boat that this should be the end? The end all be. Do you think that 3 should have been the ending? And that 4 should have been the ending? Do you think something like this should be the ending? Or do you think they should keep pumping out movies? Because I know there's some people who probably think that's a good idea. Like, if we didn't end on 3, we might as well keep making more until Bonnie's story ends. You see, then they could keep doing it over and over again and keep making money. But I think the ending on 5, it was an overdue ending. But I think this could top the ending of 3 if they play their cards right. And since it's Pixar, I think they could. Now, they do have some misses recently. They also might biff it. But they've never gone bad with Toy Story. Even Toy Story 4, I know it's controversial. But the reason it's super controversial for most people is because they just felt like it should have ended. If people can be convinced, especially with that cold open or something like that, that this is an even better ending than 3, then I think that would convert everyone back over and say, you know what, Toy Story 4 worked. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Peace out, Pixar and Toy Story fans, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Have you got what it takes to